Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5 a.m. Club. As you can see, it's a wet old day here in Sydney town, and I'm just over here on a pontoon under some cover out of the rain, and I thought I'd take the opportunity this morning before I get to work to go through and do one more 5 a.m. Club, one more book summary to try and get us off to a good hump day start. So it's going to be windy this morning from what I can see on the forecast, and it's going to be pretty wet, so I don't think I'll be doing much work today. But what I want to do on this moist, inclement Wednesday here in Sydney is do a book summary on a book entitled How to Be a Conservative by Roger Scrunton. And I think it's a timely sort of book to review and a topic to get into, because it was only yesterday or the day before that somebody on Facebook, one of my friends on Facebook, accused me of being a communist of all things. And I think it's probably the second time in my lifetime that somebody has called me a communist, and I don't know why, but at the end of the day, I was born in this country. I've voted Liberal all my life. I went to a conservative school. I went to a conservative university, Sydney University. I've done economics. I engage in business, and I'm pretty open with my thoughts and my passions. But to be called a communist is a very rare thing. But what I want to do today is just go through and talk about how to be a conservative according to this book and according to this author, and see what we can learn, and to I guess address some of the challenges, some of the issues that are faced in the world today. So this author kicks off his book with an interesting quote. What I love to do in my book summaries is to kick off the book summary with just a quote from the author, just to get an understanding, just to get positioned and get an initial baptism into their thoughts and what makes them tick, because that'll help us, I guess, get in the mood, get in the groove, to be able to review the book and understand it a little bit better. So the author in this book kicks off with a quote where he basically says that beauty is vanishing from the world as we know it, because we live our lives as though beauty no longer mattered, and that our views and values and principles of the past no longer matter. But this author also reminds us that today, more than any time in the past in the history of our lives, having a conservative view, having values, having principles, and being able to, I guess, leverage them and return to them is an important aspect of being a free person, especially in a world which is rapidly trying to change, trying to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and we're continually invited to be open-minded, which has its threats, because being open-minded and being open to change without making sure that that change serves you is quite dangerous. And I remember a friend of mine once telling me that there is a risk. There is a risk with being open-minded or too open-minded, and there is a call to action for each and every one of us to keep guard to the things which are special to us, because if we don't take the opportunity to guard those things and protect those things which form our identity and build and maintain our identity, then we run a risk of losing our identity and being set adrift in a river, in an ocean which is buffeted by winds, by rain, by strong rips and currents, and before you know it, you'll be in a place where you never thought possible, and be, I guess, caught up in the vortex of continual change just for the sake of change. But we must remember, and we must never forget, that being open-minded and being undiscerning with that open-mindedness is an invitation to make our brains, our minds, an absolute garbage tip for other people's rubbish. So make sure that you know what you stand for, make sure you understand what you believe, and that you're comfortable and proud to hold on to those things, because there are people trying to swap out your conservative views, your individuality, your family values and principles. They're trying to swap those out and replace them with things which are not time tested and may not be of any value at all. So let's get into this book summary, and what I'd like to firstly do is touch on the first formal point to come out of this book, is where the author says quite proudly and loudly that a healthy society should be built from below instead of being ruled from above. So what we're talking about is a society that is bottoms up and not top down. So the society reflects the grassroots views, which hopefully reflect the family structures and family views that have been built up and passed down over time, so that you've got a gelling together. You've got a culture which is inextricably intertwined with the present and the past. So a society, according to this author, that is an expression of the will of the majority. And what we face in today's world, if we're not careful with the politics of the day, the whims of small individual groups, is that we end up expressing the wills of the smaller groups at the expense of the majority. And the bottom line is, we know we've grown up in families, we've grown up in businesses, we've grown up with lots of people in our lives, and the key lesson, and especially when it comes to identity politics, is that if you're constantly trying to be all things to all people, you end up having a family, a group, an organisation which is disjointed, because you can't basically satisfy the needs of the majority by focusing and being continually holding up the needs of the minority, is what I'm trying to say. So it just makes sense that democracy, the whole concept of democracy, is to support the demos, the majority, making sure that you tick the boxes, as many boxes as possible, for the majority of people, and that may come, sadly, unfortunately, at the expense of the minority. So you can't keep on making sure that everybody in your family is catered for and is happy if that means the majority are displaced and unhappy. So leaders, parents, managers, you name it, need to make the tough decisions in their lives and in their businesses to sometimes make some people unhappy. And sadly, some people may feel displaced. But that's the whole thing about society, is that society is there to try and be utopian where it can be, but unfortunately it needs to manage and maintain and look after the interests of the majority, whatever those interests are. And those interests may change over time, but generally most people over the history of time have been quite consistent in terms of what makes them tick and what they look for in life in terms of their fulfillment, their enjoyment, and all of those things. And it's up to society to make sure that we carry those things on, to manage and maintain them without minimising them, wiping them out, or even cancelling them, which is a big thing which is happening in today's society. So the job of a conservative person, a conservative family, a conservative government, is to look after the majority. And it may be unpopular to the minority, but that's life at the end of the day. That's the law of the jungle, and that's how life has always been. If you're not looking after the majority interests, then you're not going to be in power in government for too long. So a lot of people mistake what conservative or being a conservative is. A conservative is not a person necessarily who is not progressive. Now, you can be progressive in your views, you can be progressive in your life, in terms of the economy, in terms of business, in terms of education and learning, but that learning needs to add to what you already do and know, and not necessarily swap it out or replace it. You know, you need to be conservative, extremely conservative according to the author here, with your values and principles. And you need to preserve your moral compass, or the majority's moral compass, and to make sure that you don't let go and throw out, as we said before, the baby with the bathwater. You need to hold on to your history, because your history is your identity, and we need to make sure that we nurture and highlight and support anything which is part of a common purpose, a common identity. Now, there's no point, as the author says, in rushing headstrong into the future and bringing the future close to you while leaving your past behind. Because at the end of the day, family is, or should be, at the core. Even though we've noticed over the past decade or so, there's been a bit of a breakdown of the family and a lesser sort of focus on what the family represents. But the author here calls us to action and say, well, if you don't have a common element, and if that common element isn't the family and the family values, then and then only is the beginning of the end of society. because if you're looking at making people happy as individuals, and if that happiness and that fulfillment is not based on building a family and being part of a family and nurturing and growing a family, then you're building a society of hedonism, where people just do what they do just to satisfy themselves without considering or worrying about the sacrifice or or helping or nurturing or supporting the others around them. Because it's really that family, those family values that are what we're all about. Sorry for mumbling there and staccatoing, but it's this whole family concept, which is the centre, or should be the centre of our society. And as we said, there may be 5, 10, 15, 20% of people who are not family oriented, but they need to blend in. They need to learn to fit in to the rest of society. Now, you can't have people with extreme fringe views trying to dictate terms to the minority, to the majority. You can't have minorities, the tail wagging the dog, because if you do that, you may make some people happy in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to have people who are not happy. And if you've got the majority which are unhappy, then in a democracy, in a free democracy, then they're going to band together at the next election, at the next opportunity, and call out the government, the people in charge, unless, of course, they're being manipulated through media and through spin management of messaging. But sooner or later, people are going to wake up. They're going to go to the mirror, look themselves in the mirror and say, well, shit, this is not what I signed up to. This is not who I thought I was, or this is not who I want to be, and make the necessary changes. So a conservative society, according to this authorship, is where a society strives to offer equal opportunity where possible and keeps all institutions involved in the market. And yes, by all means, give everybody a voice, but make sure that the voice of the majority is heard first and foremost. And we see time and time again that the silent majority, Australia is a conservative society, and we have a silent, a quiet majority who make their voice, make their views heard very loudly come election time. But for most of the other time, you don't hear very much said about many topics. Whilst you have the minorities, whilst you have the fringe dwellers, especially now when we've got social media, where social media abounds, now you'll have small groups which appear to be large groups, but it's only because of social media, and you've got a few people making lots of posts, saying lots of things, being very, very bold and forthright. But just because you hear a few people being very, very loud should never sway your views and make you think as if you don't belong. Because at the end of the day, as we know, and as we've learnt time and time again here in Australia, the majority are very, very quiet, but they rule with an iron fist. So the author then goes on here to talk a little bit about communism, and he says that communism is a system which basically nationalises everything for the greater good, or under the guise of the greater good, with a central administration. But as we've seen time and time again, communist systems, communist views end up failing, and failing miserably, because at the end of the day, when you put the power in the hands of the few, privilege will always find loopholes. Privilege will always bubble to the top, where the privileged few, the ones in power who are able to manipulate and get over, through, under the loopholes, will find ways to fulfill their desires at the expense of other people, and create even stronger, even more ruthless hierarchies than the hierarchies that you'd ever see in a democracy. So that's all I've got to say, I guess, on communism. And to think that I am a communist, or to be claimed to be a communist by people on Facebook, people who worship Clive Palmer and Craig Kelly. I guess anybody who follows that sort of politics are going to be extremist in their views anyway. So whatever they say, whatever comes out of their mouth, is like water off a duck's back for me, because I tend to express and to share the views of the Australian government, the Liberal Party, and if the Liberal Party are considered to be communists, then I too am a communist as well. But of course, there are countries, there are people throughout the whole civilised world that would absolutely love to be and live in Australia, and to have an Australian style of government, managing their economy, managing their social structures, so that they could hopefully be blessed with the lifestyle of what we here in Australia are living and enjoying. So the last point that the author talks about is the concept of nationalism, and he said that nationalism as a concept became quite controversial, but at the end of the day, he says that nationalism, when expressed fully and properly, leads to a better society. It's not good, of course, when it's extreme, but nothing is good when it's extreme, because as we mentioned earlier in this post, that extreme views are usually held by people who are in the minority, on the fringe, and are not expressing the will of the majority. And of course, anything which is expressed just to satisfy the minority, the identity politics, is going to be a failure, because it's going to put us up against them. It's going to be a zero, it's not going to be a zero-sum game, or it is going to be a zero-sum game. Some people will gain at other people's expense, but it's the minority will be gaining at the majority's expense, which doesn't work. It can't work. So the minority have got to learn, I guess, to fit in with the majority, and it's only when the majority within a family, within a business, in a society are satisfied and happy and fulfilled, that they will be more generous with their offerings to enable the minority to have a better life. The minority have got two choices. They can either change and become part of the majority, or else they can stay as a minority but not expect to have all that they wish, unless of course the majority consider it being worthy and being fair, and they're willing to give up on what they've got to satisfy the minority views. So the author talks about nationalism, and it's good in many ways, because at the end of the day, it needs to express the family and needs to express what's happening at the grassroots level, the family values. And because at the end of the day, nationalism should be how you feel about your country and how you feel about the people that you live with, you coexist with. And as we said, it's a bigger example, it's a bigger expression of just a small family, a typical family. And like families, you know, a nation, a company, a group will fight. But they're fighting, as the Prime Minister says, to solve the problems. To solve the problems in the best possible way, to make sure that the majority of people are happy with the outcomes, not the minority of people. It's important to understand that society, democracy, is all about satisfying the majority, while of course listening to the voices of the minority, not turning their back on the minority, but by the same token not allowing the minority to be the tail that wags the dog. So it's all about solving problems, having a shared identity, and making sure that we all belong, or at least the majority feel that they belong. So, and as we said, unless the majority are satisfied, unless the majority are happy with their lives, then you're not going to have a society that's going to want to cater and look after the ones who are less fortunate. At the end of the day, you need to look after the ones, the majority first, look after their interests, and when their interests are satisfied, then and only then a society can become more open and more willing to satisfy the needs of others who sit outside of that majority. Anyway, a very tricky topic this morning, as you can probably see and understand, and it's a topic that not very many people would want to talk about. But in the spirit of Jim's 5 a.m. club, I always love putting my hand down the rabbit hole and pulling out whatever comes out, be it a rabbit, be it a snake. Who knows where these topics are going to lead us. But with the beauty, with the magic of technology, with the ability to tap into OPE, other people's experiences, and to learn from books and from the wisdom that others have brought together, we've created a forum. We've created a forum where we can learn something different. We can learn something new every single day, and at the same time have a backdrop of this magnificent city of Sydney. So I better head off to work. I don't think there'll be much happening today at work on the construction site, given that it's really windy and it's really wet. But I'll head off to work. I've made some lunch today, so I'll spend most of the day in the shed. I may do another couple of book summaries throughout the day, but I wish you all the very best. And the Australian Open has commenced without Djokovic, but once again, Novak Djokovic represented and represents a small minority of views, and he tried his hardest to try to get the tail to wag the dog. But Australia, as we've said time and time again, is a conservative society with a conservative government, and we basically lead the world when it comes to certain things, and I am sure that the position that Australia has taken regarding the vaccination of the elite professional sports people will be echoed in other jurisdictions, and I even heard yesterday that France is looking at banning sports people, professional sports people, from entering the country unless they are fully vaxxed or have a valid exemption. So Novak Djokovic, by the look of it, will struggle this year during the pandemic to play in any of the majors. I don't see him playing in England, America, or France for that matter. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but to understand that what the Australian government did is it supported its conservative view, and its conservative position was to maintain its borders as best it can and to issue a message to all of those who look to playing games, that at the end of the day, when it comes to people's health, when it comes to the health of the economy, the majority are the ones who rule, not the minority. Anyway, take care everybody, love to you, and make sure that we can live, learn and pass it on, and have a happy hump day. Bye for now.